Have you ever forgotten a name or misplaced your keys and wondered if it was just age or something more serious? What if I told you that by the time most people realize it's dementia, it's already too late to reverse it? And what if there was a narrow window right at the start where the brain could still fight back, repair itself, and even regain lost ground? Hi, I'm Dr. Nana, and today on Senior Health Boost, we're diving deep into the early signs of dementia, the ones that can make all the difference between preserving your independence and losing it forever. Dementia is one of the most devastating conditions a person can face. The body may still be there, but the person you once knew, their memories, their personality, their ability to reason can slowly disappear. Dementia is not a single disease, but rather an umbrella term that covers many different forms. The most common is Alzheimer's, linked to amyloid plaques and tangled tau proteins. There's also Lewy body dementia, with protein clumps, and vascular dementia, caused by multiple silent strokes. But here's the truth, for everyday life, the type doesn't matter much. No matter what label you put on it, the reality is the same. Once it advances, there's very little doctors can do. That's why I want to focus on what truly matters, spotting the earliest changes, understanding the processes that drive them, and taking action before it's too late. I've watched countless videos and read expert opinions, and too often the discussion stops at classification. Is it dementia, or just normal aging? Is it mild forgetfulness, or something more? It's as if the diagnosis is just a way to help people accept what's happening, the way you might be patient with a child because you know they're not yet mature enough to understand. But here's what I want you to remember. If we catch dementia in its earliest stages, the brain can still help heal itself. Why? Because we need brain function to save brain function. When enough is still intact, we have the motivation to stay active, eat better, challenge our minds, and keep engaging with life. That motivation drives brain activity, which, in turn, fuels more motivation. The opposite, sadly, is also true. Once brain function drops below a certain point, motivation fades. Without motivation, activity slows. Without activity, brain function declines even faster. It's a downward spiral, and past a certain stage, there simply isn't enough healthy brain tissue or energy left to turn it around. That's why today, I want to walk you through the 7 stages of mental decline so you'll see exactly why catching it early is so important. Stage 1 is normal. Yes, they actually call it stage 1 instead of stage 0, even though nothing is wrong yet. This is where you want to be. Stage 2 is very mild decline. You're still on the safe side of the spectrum. This isn't dementia yet. You might occasionally forget where you put your glasses, or you can't think of a familiar word right away. Sometimes you just have a slow day. This can happen to anyone, and in many cases, it's just part of aging. The important thing to understand is that brain degeneration is a process that's happening, to some degree, in all of us. The key is to slow it down so much that you can live your entire life with your mental sharpness largely intact. Stage 3 is where things shift into early stage dementia, and that's where we'll pick up on the next page. In the last part, we explored stage 1 and stage 2 of mental decline, and we began touching on stage 3, those early warning signs when forgetfulness becomes more than just a senior moment. Now, let's look more closely at what really happens in stage 3, and then move into stage 4, where the changes become harder to ignore. Stage 3, early stage dementia, mild decline. At this stage, you're still in the early phase. It's still considered a mild decline, but subtle changes begin to stand out, especially to the person experiencing them. One of the most common things you might notice? Forgetting names. Imagine you're in conversation with someone new. They introduce themselves. You shake hands, you smile, you may even repeat their name aloud. But barely a minute later, it's gone, like the sound vanished into thin air. Your short-term memory, the quick access storage of your mind, is starting to slip. Another way this can show up is when you read a paragraph in a book or article, or watch a short video clip, and almost immediately realize you can't remember what it was about. You know, you just took in the information. You just can't hold onto it. This is often the stage where people begin to consciously compensate. They're aware something is slipping, and so they start creating strategies to cope. They leave breadcrumbs for themselves, literally or figuratively. They might write down more notes than they used to, keep lists not just for groceries, but for almost everything, or leave little reminders in strategic places. Now, don't get me wrong, everyone uses lists. That's perfectly normal. But here, it's different. It's not just about being organized, it's about survival and daily functioning. Without these breadcrumbs, things would start to unravel. Even tasks that involve planning, especially if they have multiple steps, become harder to manage without those notes or lists. A simple example: organizing a dinner party. In the past, you could keep track of the guest list, the menu, the shopping, and the cooking schedule all in your head. At stage 3, you'd need to write down every step and maybe even check your notes multiple times to make sure you're on track. The encouraging part: at stage 3, Dr. Nana reminds us, there's still enough brain power, enough awareness, and enough motivation to turn things around if you take the right steps. You can still work with the brain's natural ability to adapt, repair, and strengthen connections. The key is to act now, before the slide gets steeper. Stage 4, moderate decline, still early stage dementia. Here's where the challenge deepens. Stage 4 is technically still in the early range, but the decline becomes more noticeable, both to the person and to those around them. One of the clearest changes? Forgetting recent events. This isn't about a single paragraph you just read. This is about activities, conversations, or experiences that happened hours or days ago. You might attend a family gathering and later have no recollection of certain conversations, or even of being there for specific moments. Math skills often take a hit here. Even simple calculations become a struggle. Dr. Nana gives a classic test. Start at 100 and subtract 7. Easy enough, right? 100 minus 7 is 93. Then 93 minus 7 is 86, and so on. At stage 4, this kind of task can feel like hitting a wall. The sequence gets muddled, or the person simply can't do it without losing track. Financial tasks: paying bills, balancing a checkbook, managing accounts can become overwhelming. Even with concentration, the numbers don't seem to connect the way they used to. This is often when family members step in to help manage money or oversee other responsibilities that require multiple steps and clear organization. Planning, in general, becomes harder. It's not just about remembering what to do, it's about sequencing actions in the right order and adjusting when things change. Even cooking a familiar recipe might be difficult without constant reference to the instructions. What's happening in the brain? While these stages are described in terms of cognitive changes, memory, reasoning, calculation, what's happening physically is just as important. The brain is made of living tissue, and like any part of the body, it can wear down over time. By the time symptoms appear, the decline has already been underway for years at the cellular level. Inside each brain cell, tiny power plants called mitochondria produce the energy needed for thinking, remembering, and processing. When they begin to weaken, brain cells can't send signals as efficiently. The result? A gradual loss of endurance and performance. This decline is progressive. It doesn't jump from perfect health to severe impairment overnight. There are warning signs, subtle, gradual, long before most people would even think of dementia. If these earliest changes are recognized and addressed, the process can often be slowed or even reversed. But once you move from those early cellular changes into noticeable cognitive symptoms, the challenge grows. The first physical signs before memory loss. Here's something many people don't realize. One of the earliest signs isn't forgetfulness at all. It's a reduction in brain endurance. You may notice your attention span shrinking. Maybe you can't focus on a conversation or a project for as long as you used to. Mental fatigue sets in faster. Tasks that once felt effortless now feel draining. You might find yourself reaching for caffeine or other stimulants just to push through the day, not because you're physically tired, but because your brain feels like it's slowing down. Sometimes it's even more subtle. You might just feel that your thinking isn't as sharp, or that your problem-solving speed isn't what it used to be. These are small changes, but they matter. Another early clue? Changes in posture and movement. Even before memory loss sets in, the nervous system, which controls balance, coordination, and muscle tone, can begin to lose efficiency. This might look like slower walking, less confident steps, or a tendency to slouch without realizing it. The brain and body are deeply connected, so changes in one often reflect changes in the other. By understanding these first shifts, the forgotten names, the breadcrumb trails, the lost recent memories, the mental fatigue, the small changes in posture, you can start to see dementia not as a sudden switch, but as a long process. And in that process, there are windows where action can make a real difference. On the next page, we'll explore how these physical and cognitive changes progress together, and why certain warning signs in movement, coordination, and daily functioning can be just as important as memory loss in predicting what comes next. Earlier, we looked at the earliest physical signs, the smaller attention span, mental fatigue, subtle posture changes that can show up long before memory loss. Now, let's dig deeper into how these physical clues reveal what's really happening in the brain, and how to tell the difference between normal aging and dementia. When physical signs speak for the brain, even when your thinking still feels sharp, subtle changes in your body can point to a slow degeneration of brain function. These aren't just quirks of getting older, they're signals that the physical capacity of the brain to do its work is being compromised. For instance, if you're sitting still and notice an unexplained twitching or tremor in your hand, that's your brain struggling to control movement the way it used to. Or maybe you see your handwriting changing, not out of preference or style, but becoming smaller, cramped, almost compressed. This shrinking script, called micrographia, is another sign that neural pathways aren't firing as smoothly. Your sense of smell can also fade. Smell is entirely dependent on brain function, so if food no longer has the aroma it once did, it's a sign worth noting. And if your quality of sleep declines, trouble staying asleep, feeling unrested, waking at odd hours, that too can be linked to brain changes. The brain regulates sleep cycles, hormone production, and stress response, so disruption here often means the underlying systems aren't working as well. Posture, movement, and the brain's store posture says more about brain health than most people realize. Think about it. We start life curled up in a fetal position, then, as the brain matures, our posture straightens and stabilizes. When the brain weakens, posture can regress. A gradual hunch or forward curl may indicate that the brain's motor control and postural reflexes are fading. Another telltale sign is a reduced arm swing when walking. You might notice one arm swinging less than the other, or both moving less than before. This isn't just about muscles, it's about the brain's ability to coordinate automatic movement. The fascinating thing, as Dr. Nana points out, is that the connection works both ways. Paying attention to posture and arm swing and actively correcting them can help stimulate and reinforce brain function. Small, deliberate actions like walking with a purposeful stride can actually send wake-up signals to neural circuits. Normal aging vs dementia. Key difference. One of the most important questions is, when do these changes cross the line into dementia? With dementia, poor judgment isn't occasional, it's chronic. The ability to make sound decisions is compromised on a consistent basis. In normal aging, you might make a questionable choice once in a while, but with time and thought, you can reason it through. Financial management is another area where the difference shows. Anyone can miss paying a bill now and then, but with dementia, there's a sustained inability to handle a budget or manage accounts even with reminders. Time awareness also shifts. People with dementia can lose track not just of the day or month, but even the season. It's not unusual for them to ask about snow in the middle of summer. By contrast, in normal aging, you might momentarily forget what day it is, but you can figure it out when you pause to think. Losing items happens to everyone. The difference is in what happens next. A healthy brain can usually retrace steps to find what's missing, while a brain with dementia often cannot. And conversation? With normal aging, you might occasionally struggle to find a word or lose your train of thought, but you can get back on track. With dementia, speech and reasoning can become disorganized, with no clear structure, making it difficult for others to follow. When public figures show the signs, these differences have made headlines in recent years, as public figures show signs of possible cognitive decline. Slurred sentences, mixed-up references, and fragmented thoughts spark debates about whether it's fatigue, stress, or something deeper. While no one can diagnose from afar, these moments highlight how dementia can affect not just memory, but communication and decision-making. Stage 5. Mid-stage dementia. B. Stage 5. The decline is moderate to severe. Brain damage is more pronounced, and memory loss extends beyond recent events to include long-known personal facts. People may suddenly be unable to recall their own address or phone number details they've had memorized for decades. Orientation to time and season worsens, and dressing appropriately becomes a challenge. Clothing might be mismatched, unsuitable for the weather, or worn in odd combinations. This isn't just forgetfulness, it's the result of deeper damage to the brain's ability to process, recall, and apply information. While we'll explore causes more in the next section, Dr. Nana notes that recognizing these signs is key to understanding how far the condition has progressed and why care strategies must adapt accordingly. Up next, We'll break down what actually drives these changes inside the brain, and why knowing the causes is essential if we want to slow the process or prevent it from starting in the first place. We've walked through the earliest hints, the physical cues, and the mid-stage struggles of dementia. Now, we're at the final, most devastating stages, but before we get there, I want to help you understand why dementia develops in the first place, and what you can do long before it ever reaches this point. Why dementia develops and the rule you can't ignore. Dementia can develop for different reasons. Yes, brain injury or trauma can sometimes lead to it, but compared to the overall number of cases, those are rare. The vast majority come from brain disease and gradual degeneration, a slow, relentless wearing down of mental processes caused by physical breakdown in the brain. Here's the first truth you need to know: use it or lose it. Think of your brain like a muscle. If you break your arm and keep it in a cast for weeks, the muscle shrinks because it's not being used. Your brain is no different. Without consistent, meaningful use, it will weaken. That's the single most important driver of brain degeneration. Sure, genetics play a role. Some people are more predisposed than others. But as Dr. Nana often says, genetics load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. And lifestyle is where we have the most control. What the brain needs to stay alivedo function, the brain needs to things above all else. 1. Fuel the food you eat. 2. Oxygen to burn that fuel and turn it into energy. But here's the part most people miss: the brain also needs stimulation. And not just any stimulation. Many people think brain games like crossword puzzles or playing bridge are the key. They help, but they're just a tiny fraction of the picture. In fact, more than 90% of the stimulation that keeps your brain alive and firing comes from movement. That's why Dr. Nana is always emphasizing exercise, not just for your heart, not just to manage weight, but as the single best way to keep your brain alive. When you move, you increase blood flow to the brain. More blood flow means more oxygen and nutrients delivered to brain cells. Without that stimulation, blood flow decreases, starved neurons begin to weaken, and brain degeneration speeds up. The role of neuroinflammation and metabolic disease. Another major accelerator of brain decline is neuroinflammation, chronic inflammation inside the brain itself. This often stems from metabolic disease. You might think of metabolism only in terms of weight loss or diabetes, but the link to dementia is so strong that Alzheimer's is sometimes called type 3 diabetes. If you have insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome, your risk of dementia skyrockets. High blood sugar, poor diet, and lack of exercise can damage blood vessels, disrupt energy production in brain cells, and trigger inflammation that chips away at your mental sharpness year after year. Toxins also play a role from processed foods, unhealthy fats, and environmental pollutants. Even poor gut health can send inflammatory signals to the brain. That's why a healthy lifestyle, from what you eat to how you move to how you manage stress, is absolutely essential for prevention. Stage 6: mid to late stage dementia. Stage 6 is where dementia becomes truly heartbreaking for both the person living with it and their loved ones. This is severe decline. One of the most painful signs is when someone can no longer recall the name of their spouse, the person they've shared decades of life, love, and memories with. The face may still be familiar, but the connection is gone. They're physically present, but in so many ways, they're no longer there. At this stage, constant supervision is usually necessary. People may wander and get lost. Their judgment is so impaired that they can't make safe decisions. Simple tasks like dressing, bathing, or eating require assistance. They can be easily injured because they've lost the ability to recognize danger. Even personality shifts can be extreme. The warm, patient partner you once knew might now show agitation, confusion, or completely different behavior patterns. The disease doesn't just erode memory, it strips away the traits that made that person who they were. Stage 7: late stage dementia. This is the final and most severe stage. Here, the person is almost completely gone in terms of awareness and responsiveness. They may no longer recognize family, friends, or even themselves. Conversation becomes impossible. Words, if spoken, are random and disconnected, with no context or meaning. Often, there's no reaction to touch, voice, or gestures. The ability to understand or interact is gone. Basic functions like swallowing may fail, making eating and drinking dangerous without specialized care. It's in this stage that we see the full reality of dementia, a life once rich with relationships, skills, and memories reduced to silence and stillness. And by this point, There is no turning back. The takeaway: why action must start early. I hope you can see now that the symptoms most people associate with dementia, the profound memory loss, the inability to recognize loved ones, are the final chapters of the disease. By the time you reach these stages, it's too late to reverse the process. The window for action is much earlier. It's when you first notice small changes, a little less endurance in your brain's focus, subtle posture changes, moments of forgetfulness that feel different than usual. That's when you still have the ability to compensate. That's when you can create new habits, stimulate your brain through movement, improve your diet, reduce inflammation, and protect your cognitive health for years to come. Dr. Nana's message is clear. Don't wait for the obvious signs of dementia. By then, the opportunity has passed. The time to fight for your brain is now. If this video opened your eyes to the truth about dementia and how early action can make a difference, then let's take the next step together. Your health is your greatest asset. Protect it, nurture it, and never take it for granted. On Senior Health Boost, we share powerful, practical strategies to help you stay sharp, active, and independent for as long as possible. So if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to Senior Health Boost, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a life-changing tip. Because your future self and your loved ones will thank you for every smart choice you make today.